All right, so we are live, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And I am so excited today, more excited than I usually am, for those of you who know my relentless enthusiasm, because we are joined by two amazing ladies that have been part of a huge expedition we've been covering for 10 months now. So Sunniva, Sorby, and Hilde Strom have been in Bamsebu. So it's a remote trapper's cabin in Svalbard, one of the most beautiful, remote, inhospitable regions of the entire world. We've been joined by them and some of their expert colleagues from all around the world for the last 10 months in highlighting their amazing expedition, the citizen science projects that they're doing, and so much more. So right now, they're in Longyearbyen in Norway for 1 week before they head back to Bamsebu, where they'll continue writing their book, collecting data and observations for their citizen science project, and sharing their stories and key learning through their website on courtesy of Speedcast. So all of us have been learning to social isolate and social distance one another. They are the masters of it. They've spent 7,000 hours together over 10 months alone in this cabin. And so they are, sorry, making funny faces. It's such a pleasure to have them back where we can actually hear from them directly. It's going to be such a thrill today. And then we have another special speaker that I'll be introducing a little bit later. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Sunniva and Hilde, and take us away.
Oh, Jesse, you are just the dream. Thank you. It's so, you know what? We haven't seen a lot of people, and so it's really nice to see you. I just really wanted to say thank you to you and Joe and Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, because it has been 10 months of hosting at least 5,000 kids around the world on topics that range from technology to climate change to food and weather, and it's not been easy because we've been calling you with a satellite phone and it gets dropped off all the time, and now it's our first interview with you live, and so this is a real pleasure, and without you we wouldn't be spreading our message of embracing the planet as we have, so thank you.
Thank you. It's been such a thrill having you two, and it's so exciting. And again, all our broadcasts with you guys are on our YouTube channel, so anyone can check out any of the broadcasts with all your expert partners and from the cabin as well. So it's so exciting to see you guys in person again. And yeah, let's keep diving in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great pleasure being live, because like Sunniva said, we have been cut off for 10 months calling into this event. So but just a few words about Bamsebu. We came here just for a week. We're doing a getting more food resupply for the month to come, and we've been out of a lot of food lately. So coming back to the civilization, Sunniva having some more coffee, and just be able to go to the store and buy ice cream and fresh fruit, and yeah, it's fantastic. But we are longing back to the Bamsebu area, and you will have a short little video that Jesse is going to show all of us. So I think that's part of what we have been doing now for the last 10 months. So take it away, Jesse.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, ladies. Glad you guys get some more coffee. And as you said, let's bring up that video and highlight some of the amazing work that you guys have been doing. Share that screen and...
Vi ikke flinke nok, kanskje som kvinner, å selge inn dramatikken I det vi skal gjøre. For meg dette helt naturlig. Men det jo litt utenom det vanlige. Og det historisk også, som litt morsomt. Men jeg bare lurer på om det hadde vært lettere hvis jeg var en mann. For den finansielle biten av det har vært en litt sånn tung vei å gå. Og vi ikke på plass enda. Og vi har 4 måneder igjen.
I mean, preparation is key to any successful venture. And as hard as it is to actually even come here for the time that we're coming here in terms of all the logistics that Hilde's had to go through, and just even planning for a training trip is an expedition in itself. And so she has spent many months preparing for our testing trip. So that's a mini expedition, and there's no option to not come here and test equipment, because this is the real deal. This is us completely disconnected from the outside world, self-sufficient, with all our,
decades plus of experience. That's going to come in handy for certain. But then there's us wanting to live as sustainably and as thoughtfully as possible, and that requires, believe it or not, a tremendous amount of effort from both our equipment and the supplies that we'll be getting.
Så skal vel berges. Skal i hvert fall kjempe for vannet vårt.
New light, first spring, clean wash dresses, bright light, notice. So we ought to get dressed, feel right, your soul is. Check your order manifest, inside, no regrets. Love your life with God. 1, 2, 3.
Han gikk her, men jeg bare lurer på om han har snuset. Det ville jo ikke vært noe rart, for der er det jo mat. Da går vi inn i mørketida med bjørn rundt veggene, Sunniva.
Ja, men da var det et godt minne av å... Herregud.
Ja, det er greit å bli påminnet at de er her. Nå har vi hatt 10 isbjørner på besøk på 5 dager. Så er det greit å ha en vinduslem med spiker på om natta. Hva driver du etter da? Pusser du tennene? Ja.
Today is March 9th. It's a full moon, and it's the first time that I see the sun since October. Oh, I have to open up the window. Oh, look at this. There it is. There it is.
Wow. I think that's the reaction that everybody has, even if they're muted. That was incredible. I like how you started the expedition in a place that for everyone who's joined in is like equally incredibly foreign. And then we started Longyearbyen where you guys are in civilization now, complete with coffee.
Hello,
And
everyone. How are you? I hope everyone's okay, staying safe, washing their hands, not touching the
there we
face.
go, guys.
That's another video
In
with
this
That's another
crazy
video.
COVID madness.
Which I don't know where it's
I'm
playing from. There we
really
go. Sorry about that,
pissed
guys.
off that we weren't able to go.
Sorry. There we go.
And then some of the
Oh,
lessons
so you can see the second video. That's exciting. So you can check it out. I just linked Hearts on the Ice as a website to all our people in the YouTube chat bar as well, so people can learn more about your expedition. But what an incredible teaser of the documentary. Makes me want to see the whole thing. So with that, I'll turn it back to you guys to say a few words, introduce our guest speaker today, and then I'll do a joint introduction as well, and we'll keep the party going.
Yeah, and I just want to say a quick little thing. In October, I had the pleasure of meeting Heidi for the first time. Hilde had met her before. And Heidi and film team from TV2, they produced something called Sur le Front. And we have yet to see that, but we will in the next few days while we're here. But it was just, we hit it off, the three of us, Heidi and Hilde and myself. And what a gem you are, Heidi. And we're just so thrilled that you're here. Just thank you.
Yeah, we're really proud of having you on sort of our team, Heidi. So we're so much look forward to hear you tonight. So
thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, let's figure out who Heidi is and might be joining us from. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction and we will dive in. So joining us from the French Alps, we've got speakers joining us from all the coolest places today. We got the French Alps, we got beautiful Norway. It's quite incredible. So from the French Alps, Dr. Heidi Sevestre. So she is a glaciologist, international fellow of the Explorers Club, host of science TV programs. She's born in the heart of the French Alps, obtained her PhD in glaciology. So I didn't even know you could get a PhD in glaciology. So we're excited to get to share that sort of amazing science with you guys today. She's very much a field glaciologist. She's joined and led expeditions in the polar regions around the globe in high altitude environments. And today she works as a science communication specialist. So one of those people that can not only do incredible science and live it in the field, but share it with the public in a really engaging and exciting way in multiple languages. And so it's my great pleasure of introducing Dr. Heidi Sevestre to blow our minds with all the cool stuff that she does. So Heidi, thank you so much for joining us and take us away.
Thank you so very much, Jesse, and thank you, Hilde and Sunniva. This is so great to be able to see you again. I remember the few hours we spent together at the end of October last year, which were very emotional. I found myself being so inspired by your work, by your energy, and it was truly a privilege to share just a few hours of your life with Ekla at Bamsebu. So thank you so much for having me, and I am so thrilled to be able to speak to all the children, all the teenagers and adults following us today, because we want to tell you about all the great things we can observe in the polar regions. I think I'm lucky to share this with Hilde and Sunniva, that we get to see what very few people can see. We get to travel across the polar regions. We get to be fully immersed in nature, in some of the most extreme and some of the most sensitive environments on Earth. So as a glaciologist, I'm here today to kind of share with you not just my passion for all things frozen, but also to tell you a little bit about what's currently happening to the Arctic. So with that, I would like to share my screen. I have a few slides to share with you. So let me know if this works properly. Oh, there you go. I'm sharing my screen.
Perfect. Looks great.
So, you know, the Arctic is definitely a place we're extremely passionate about with Hearts in the Ice and myself. I got very fortunate to be able to live in Svalbard for 4 years for the duration of my PhD. And I still go back to Svalbard to teach at the university. It's kind of a good excuse to go back to Svalbard every spring. But what's happening to the Arctic matters to all of us. And that is truly what I want to share with you today, is that what is currently taking place in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. It is really touching the rest of the planet and really affecting the Northern Hemisphere. So what's happening to the Arctic at the moment is that the Arctic seems to be a very cold place, and it's still cold. I think you can ask Hilde and Sunniva how cold it is, even in the middle of summer. But the Arctic is currently warming very, very quickly. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. And that is due to climate change. We know that it is directly due to our activities, to our emissions of greenhouse gases. And the reason why the Arctic is changing so quickly is because there is one element of the Arctic that is changing a lot, and that is sea ice. So I'm sure that my great friends from Hearts in the Ice have had to deal with sea ice for quite a while this winter, because there's been a lot of sea ice in Svalbard, very good, very thick sea ice. But sea ice is basically the ocean that is freezing. So there is sea ice in the Arctic throughout the year, but in the winter, there is a lot more sea ice than during the summer. And sea ice is very important because it acts like a natural mirror. It is a great white mirror that is able to reflect solar radiation back towards space. So we need this mirror. This mirror is super important to maintain this cold and stable climate over the Arctic. But what we're seeing at the moment is that Arctic sea ice is changing very, very quickly. And just to illustrate how much of this Arctic sea ice we're losing, I just wanted to show the kind of European Union covered by sea ice and show you how much of this sea ice we've been losing. So I'm going to replay this once more. And everything that is white is basically showing how much sea ice there is in the Arctic, over the Arctic Ocean, between 1979 and today. And I think this really shows how much we are losing of this Arctic sea ice every year. And I'm sure you've heard about what's currently happening to Siberia, to the eastern part of the Arctic, especially this summer. There is this massive heat wave that is currently affecting this part of the world. And it's, again, not just affecting this part of the world. The fact that Siberia is warming up so much will affect the rest of the Arctic and will affect the mid-latitudes in the Northern Hemisphere. So what's happening in eastern Russia, in the Siberian part of Russia, is that it is warming up so much. It is crazy at the moment. I mean, we've had temperatures of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if you can imagine that, in Siberia, within the Arctic Circle. So that's about 38 degrees Celsius. Speaking of a heat wave, this is really massive news. And we do know now that this heat wave couldn't be taking place without climate change. So climate change is making this 600 times more likely to take place. And so Siberia is warming up. It is at the same time drying up, and there are a lot of wildfires taking place in that region. So not only is it getting warmer, there is a lot of more pollution being created by these wildfires, a lot of particles, which is what you can see in this image. All these fires in red are emitting a lot of CO2, but a lot of fine particles, and this is polluting the Arctic even more. So what I want to share with you today is to keep an eye on the Arctic. We always say that, you know, the Arctic is the canary in the coal mine. Do we need more evidence that climate change is taking place? I'm not sure. But still, we need to keep educating ourselves. We need to keep educating people about what is currently taking place in the Arctic. Because all the bad things we do in mid-latitude can affect the Arctic. But if we help preserving the Arctic, this will come back 1,000 times greater to us inhabiting the southern and the northern hemisphere. So every little thing that you do every day can also have this positive impact on the Arctic. So make sure you keep in mind every little habit that you have. Try to think about the Arctic in positive terms, and let's help preserve the Arctic as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heidi. What a fantastic talk, and really inspires us to look a little more in your work and more in Hearts in the Ice, which again, I've passed along in the link in the chat bar on YouTube, and I'll be sharing with all our live groups. So if you guys are up for it, Sunniva, Hilde, Heidi, if there's anything else you'd like to say, by all means, we'll incorporate that. And then what I'll do is welcome in our live groups to ask a few questions, and then go to YouTube to see any questions from our people joining from around the world there too. So is there anything else you'd like to share before we get underway with Q&A?
I think it's nice that we have time for Q&A, actually, because that's sort of the rich part of all of this. I would want to just say to people to check out Climate Sentinels, which is Heidi's project, and also Hearts in the Ice. We write a blog every week, and I believe you do too as well, Heidi. There's a lot of rich material in there to engage you with some video on heartsintheice.com and Climate Sentinels. And, you know, the more we stay curious and engaged, the more we will participate. So that's kind of why the three of us are here.
Fantastic. Well, I've just linked Climate Sentinels into the YouTube chat bar as well. Again, we'll share that with all our live groups. So 2 amazing projects to check out. Really encourage you guys to follow up and keep the learning going when this broadcast is done. With that said, let's dive in with some great Q&A. For everyone on YouTube, just let me know where you're joining from around the world. Share your questions and we'll take as many as we can. But what I'm going to do first is go to Alexandria in Virginia for Laura and her entire group of neighborhood kids. Everyone in the whole town is basically in her little apartment there. So we're going to check in with them and take a question live from the kids. So let's bring that up. There you go. You're good to go.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. All right, Ben, this is Ben, Kennedy, Audrey, and Emily. What questions do we have?
I don't have one. Neither do I.
Maybe something about the polar bears?
I just want to say thank you for having us.
Oh, we are so happy we can see your smiling faces right now.
We can tell you a little bit about polar bears and why the ice is important for them.
That would be awesome.
Do you know anything about polar bears already, maybe?
Anything you guys want to share? I don't know. They're big, they're white, they're polar.
Yes, they are.
Perfect. Well, let's dive in a little bit, because polar bears are always one of our most popular topics. So ladies, share what you'd like to tell us about.
Yes, yeah. The biggest polar bear that we had as a visitor, because we have been on a very small hut. It's 20 square meters and it's completely out in the wilderness. We have no neighbors except reindeers, foxes, and polar bears. And the biggest polar bear that we had as a visitor during the dark season, the one you saw in the film, you saw Sunniva talked about that we had the polar bear meeting, and that polar bear was 600 kilo.
Over 1,300 pounds.
It's enormous, almost as big as the hut.
The size of a Volkswagen, a little beetle bug, you know?
Yeah, and we saw the reason why they are so, they need the ice, the sea ice. They hunt seals, and the seals are resting on the top of the ice, and they make holes in the ice, and then they dive into it when they feel threatened. And the polar bear are hunting them and eat them for their survival. And now when it's less ice, the polar bears are starting to seek other things to eat. And now we have seen, Sunniva and I has been watching a polar bear that actually hunted a reindeer. But a reindeer is not as fat as a seal. So it's not a good, what do you say?
Food source,
but it's better than nothing.
Look
at them.
Oh, we got hands now. By the way, it's so interesting getting to highlight the fact that in one of the rare instances in the world, you guys are like on the menu, like, and you had to prepare to avoid that. It's not a typical thing.
It doesn't feel very comforting.
No, it's not, especially when it's like a Volkswagen sized thing with teeth. So Laura's group, if you guys have questions, you can just demute your mic and you're good to go.
Where do you get your food from?
Good question. We left Longyearbyen, where we are just now, for 10 months ago, and we bought everything we needed, and we made sure that we had as little plastic and packaging that we could, and then we left and we didn't have much resupply during our stay, and that's why we are in Longyearbyen now. We need more coffee, we need some vegetables and some frozen goods, so that's why we're here now. So we buy everything for a long period of time, and it's so good to be here and maybe buy ice cream.
I will share one thing about getting food, because I like cheese doodles.
Yeah.
You guys, anybody out there like cheese doodles? Well, we one of the ways that we got food was one time it was a cargo ship that came in, and it was dark. It was pitch black. And we got dressed in our survival suits with our headlamps and went outside, dragged the boat the way you saw in the video just now, pulled that thing in the water with in the water, launched it, got the engine started. It was super cold. And then made it over to a cargo ship, and then they can't get off to meet us. They have a big crane that comes and drops a big load right inside our boat. And then we take that and we drive back to Bamsebu and have to hand carry the stuff up to shore and then to the cabin. And it's not like just opening the door to the store, going in, picking something off the shelf, paying somebody some money, and then you're out of there. This is food for us has been a major, major operation.
And we also had to make sure that all the food was secured for the polar bears. So we had the food in big barrels,
Mm-hmm.
and they were polar bear proof.
I don't have to polar bear proof my food, and that's much more convenient. I like, by the way, when you guys are highlighting your food, that it's like all the important stuff is sort of said, oh yeah, but the cheese doodles and coffee, that's where it's really at. So we're dispensing scientific and exploration inspiration, but not dietary inspiration to all our kids joining us today, which is very exciting. I'm going to go to Fabrice's class in Philadelphia as our second live group. So Fabrice, if you want to ask a question on behalf of your class, go for it.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Sunniva. Thank you, Heïdi. Thank you, Dr. Sevestre. I'm looking at all my polar bear questions from my students to see if there's something that you haven't said already. There's a few still that I think I could ask. I'm gonna choose one that I think relates well to our theme today. What about polar bear migrations? Do they migrate? And if so, how are their migrations affected by climate change?
Yeah, well,
if they are at all.
Yeah, yes, they are. We're not polar bear experts, but I have been living on Svalbard for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have, the scientists are saying that in our area around the Bamsebu, we have 6-7 polar bears that's quite around that area year round. But they also, some of the polar bears are migrating, and they are migrating usually then around Svalbard, the island that we are living on, Spitsbergen and Svalbard. So, but there are several big groups of polar bears in the Arctic, and we are among, in our area, we have 3,000 polar bears, and some of them are migrating a little bit around the island, and in the area around also in the high Arctic. But we have at least 300-400 that stays here during the summer. Wow. And in our area.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask a quick follow-up?
Sure, yeah.
That was a question from Maddie, and I have another question from Tessa that sort of relates to what you just said. Do polar bears live in groups, or are they solitary animals?
Yeah, if you want to.
Heidi, if you want to jump in as well, by all means, you can demute your mic and come on.
I was just going to say, we'll let Heidi take over, but they are very solitary mammals.
They
marine
are
mammals.
They mate in April, and then the polar bear mom go into a den around November, December, and she give birth around Christmas, and she comes out in late February, beginning of March. And then the father is actually a threat to the polar bear cubs.
Yeah, they're not very friendly sometimes, the big males and the cubs. But to build on that, I wanted to say that polar bears, as Hilde explained, really depends on the sea ice for their survival. And actually today or yesterday, there was actually a really big study being released on the future of polar bears. That doesn't look good if we let sea ice retreat more and more every year. But polar bears, you know, they are at the top of the pyramid in Svalbard, and they know they are. It's really, the Arctic is their kingdom. But the polar bears also depend on the smallest organisms that you can find in the Arctic, especially on the ocean. And that is what we call the food chain, right? One of these links in the food chain is affected, then the rest of the food chain is affected as well. And what we're seeing at the moment in the Arctic is that the ocean itself is changing. The Arctic Ocean is becoming a little bit more acidic. And this is not good for all the tiny, tiny creatures that are living in that ocean. So if these creatures are not happy, you can bet that the polar bear is not happy either.
I'm really glad we got a chance to touch upon that. And I know that we're super keen on polar bears, and I'm going to share one more from a group on YouTube before I go to Courtney's group in Conifer, Colorado live. But You mentioned that polar bears are under threat, Heidi, and one of our questions from Connie in North Carolina is what will happen to them with climate change and warming? And I mean, this might be a dark answer, but if you want to share what might happen, that would be fantastic.
Well, polar bears are actually really good at adapting. And we've seen in Svalbard here polar bears eating reindeers, eating the eggs of migrating birds, which is not great for the birds. So polar bears, if they have enough time, they can adapt to changing temperatures. They were polar bears when the global temperatures were at 2 degrees before what we call pre-industrial. But that was a very, very long time ago. And the bears had plenty of time to get used to warming temperatures. So what's happening at the moment is that the climate is changing already too fast for the bears to adapt. So we need to slow this down as quickly as possible. But the projections are very stark if we keep following business as usual, which we shouldn't do. We should really act as quickly as possible. We should act now.
Right. And we will certainly, oh, go ahead. Sorry, ladies.
No, absolutely. It's so yeah. It's so important.
It is so important. And that's where projects like this come into play. I mean, such incredible things where we're highlighting the science and exploration aspect of it, but also, you know, detailing and showcasing all these amazing citizen science projects, things that people can take part in. And definitely by the time this broadcast is done, we will have some solutions for you guys. So if people were keen to ask, don't worry, we will make sure to cover that. But what we're going to do now is go to Conifer in Colorado to Courtney's group. If you guys want to demute your microphones, come on and ask a question.
And then we'll break for lunch is what I'm thinking. And then we'll go into switching
Hi there,
gears
guys.
from the current state of knowledge with PSLs. And
I think they're still watching a video there. So Courtney's group, if you guys want to come up for a question in a little bit, you'll be good to go. I'll come back in a minute, but what I'll do now is go back to Laura's group. If you guys have another one for us, come on up. Hands are shooting up. They're all over the place. All the hands.
Oh, and then, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, you guys are all good to go.
What do you guys eat?
What do we eat?
What do you eat?
What do we eat while we're at Bamsebu? I imagine.
Yeah.
Just food is a highlight for us. We have not been able to travel, not been able to shop, not been able to go to the store, not been able to watch Netflix. So you take all of that. It's kind of like going on a camping trip for 7,000 hours. That's how long we've been together. And so food for us is a real highlight because when you're working out and you're walking and you're in the cold, number one, you need food, obviously, to keep yourself strong and healthy. But I would say we ate quite well. We had different appetites in the morning. I like my oatmeal. I learned that from my dad, born in Norway, and he's living in Norway. And Hilde, you like your granola?
Cereal and also oatmeal.
And yogurt when we have it. And then a lunch, we're eating some knekkebrød, which you don't have in the States or in Canada, but it's like a dry, like a rye crisp with cheese or some pålegg, some
fish even.
Yeah, fish. And we ran out of fruit a long time ago. And then dinner, we make a nice meal. We'll cook some fish with some potatoes, some vegetables, and we'll light a candle. And then I have to tell you, we have a lot of packaged food. So preparing food for a really long time when you can't shop is super important. Not just what do you feel like eating, like lots of cheese doodles, which are not good for you, but what is going to keep you strong and healthy for a long time. So we spent some time really planning out our menu. Chocolate also.
Chocolate and chips, but mainly what you need. What does our body need for vitamins during a long time like this?
Fantastic. What a great answer. It's so interesting because we highlight expeditions on ships, we highlight expeditions to space, to the bottom of the ocean. The Arctic is one of the most remote regions in the world. And I highlighted this at the beginning, and Heidi's going to get a chance to do this and has got a chance to do this in her field expeditions as well. Like there's so much prep that goes into these expeditions, more so than actually being there is just figuring out the logistics of it, the financials of it, the food, everything that you guys have mentioned. It's such a spectacular opportunity to sort of, these are places that are used as tests for like Mars and the moon. Like this is the sort of place that they go to see what you know, the limits of human endurance and capability are. So really
Absolutely.
to highlight that. Before we go back to Farisa's group, and then we'll come back to Laura, we got all the great questions. You guys are awesome today. Heidi, so in preparation for Climate Sentinels, can you share something about the Arctic that people, you know, we've seen pictures, we've seen this beautiful imagery, you saw it in the documentary, in your PowerPoint presentation. Can you give a sense of what the Arctic's like to actually be in? I mean, it must be so spectacular, so foreign to our everyday experience. Even in Toronto, where it gets to be -35, it's such a different, yeah.
It is such a special place, and thank you for this question, Jesse, because it's so hard to imagine what the Arctic can be like. To me, you know, when I used to live in Svalbard, I really loved being kind of slapped in the face by nature every day. Nature really shows you how strong she is. And it is one of these places that make you feel extremely humble. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why we all become extremely addicted about traveling to the polar regions. We all say that we've caught the polar bug, and this is very true. If you go to the Arctic once, you will always go back. Yeah. And so what I enjoy the most is, of course, my glaciers, because this is what I study, this is what I love spending time with. But I love being able to see those places that have received such little impact by human activities. It feels like you're almost like the first one to see this mountain, to see this glacier. I loved seeing the video from Hearts in the Ice, because you can hear the footsteps in the snow, you can hear the wind blowing. I'm sure you've seen fantastic northern lights during the overwintering. And when you're in the Arctic, every day is magical. Whether it's a sunny day, whether it's a stormy day, you really feel privileged to be able to be in those places. So yeah, I really envy you, Hilde and Sunniva. I wish I was in Svalbard right now.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you so much, Heidi. And you're right, every time we have someone on who's been to the Arctic or the Antarctic, they always long to go back. I think it's places that people assume, oh, you go once and it's freezing and you run back tail between your legs, but instead it's just this immense draw to such a beautiful and magical, unique place in the world. For all our speakers today, just a quick question, because we've talked about Svalbard so much, and just I want to give a sense sort of geographically, and all of you can share this, of where Svalbard is. So I'm in Toronto, we're at 49 degrees north of the equator, and at 90 is the North Pole. So how do you get to Svalbard? Where is this on the map? If we could explain it in words, people can check on the map later, but tell us a little about it.
So maybe you'll tell them where we are, but for you, you're in Toronto, right?
Yep.
So you would fly, maybe Air Canada, from Toronto to London or Paris. Yep. And then you would fly from there to Oslo, the capital of Norway. And if you're lucky, you'll catch a connecting flight that goes directly up to Longyearbyen. It's about a 4-hour flight from Oslo to Longyearbyen. And then you get off the plane and you'd look around and you go, oh, there's no point north from here. This is it. You're in Longyearbyen, and then from there to Bamsebu is a whole nother story.
Yeah, and it's 78 degrees north where we are just now.
Yeah.
So it's Svalbard, this little island we're living on, is in between the north of Norway and the North Pole. So we are likely to be some of the few people no people are more north than Svalbard just now. So we are close to the North Pole.
That is crazy.
It's very committing to get here, and I mean the flights here, the pilots have to be pretty special, because they land in a place that, as Heidi just shared, is going to shake you. And the foundation that you walk on, because there is very little predictability around the weather. Pilots, of course, are used to that, but it just getting here is a little expedition.
And it's no trees here. It's the nature is very different from anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And we have 3 months of complete darkness, and now we have 4 months of midnight sun. So it's either or, but in between there is where the magic happens. In September, October, November, it's magic. February, March,
It all sounds like magic. I mean, I know that for you guys and seeing this for the first time, but like, well, hey, I'm on the first plane when this whole thing, blows over. But like, so 78 degrees north, by the way, just for comparison, I know to our American groups joining today, Toronto is like the northern frontier. Toronto is as like far from the Caribbean as it is from Svalbard. So it's like massive distance, incredible journey to get there. And that's just from where I am, from wherever you guys are. You can look that up online, but like midnight sun for months on end, total darkness. Like it's so hard to imagine for us what that would be like, what that would feel like. This is amazing. Thanks so much, ladies. All right, we have so many hands up. It's just too many hands. They're crazy. So I'm gonna, throw them all in. There you go. So I'm gonna go to Fabrice first, actually, for a question in Philadelphia. Then I'll come back to Laura, and we'll wrap up not too long after that. Okay, guys. So Fabrice, if you want to come up with another question.
Thank you. A question for any of you. What about native population in Svalbard? Is there any? We call them the First Nations in Canada, and in the United States they talk about the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Is there a native population of Svalbard that is not Caucasian or that does not come from Europe?
Yeah.
No, it's not a native population on Svalbard. It's a treaty signed by 52 countries, but it's mainly, I would say, maybe half of the population is from Norway, and the rest are from all over the world for those countries that signed the treaty. So it's very international. It's very inclusive community, a little settlement of almost 3,000 people. It's really a cozy place.
Thank you.
And I would just add that it's very similar to the Antarctic, in that in the Antarctic there are no indigenous populations and there are no indigenous people living here, but in Canada it's quite special.
Yeah.
Well, and I love this message of the fact that it's so many countries that work together. So it's sort of the International Space Station, Antarctica, and the North, where it's regions where, like, as a community, as a global community, we've said, look, we're going to put aside all our other differences and join together in pursuit of science and exploration and discovery. And I think that that's a beautiful thing and something that really links both your projects together, and we love sharing with kids. So I'm going to go back to Laura's group for one last question. I know there's 3 hands, but what we can do is share more questions later. So if you have more after this, send them to me. I'll send them to our fantastic speakers and we can get more done. But let's do one more question live and we'll wrap up not long after that with some final messages. Go for it, guys.
If you guys don't have trees, how is the air good over there?
I like it.
Ah, wow, that's a great question.
That's a smart one.
Yeah, Heidi, do you want to say something about the pollution or
the little things that go
I can take this. Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. I think this is a wonderful question because you're right. I mean, trees are very important to produce some of the oxygen we breathe. But you know what's even more important than trees? It is actually the ocean. And the ocean is full of these, these tiny organisms I was telling you about that live in that very cold water in the Arctic or in Antarctica, and of course the rest of the world. But all these tiny, tiny creatures, actually they produce most of the oxygen we breathe. So in Svalbard, even though there are no trees, there is still great air that we can breathe. But what's also important in Svalbard is that, yes, there are these tiny creatures around the island, but also sometimes there are bad things coming from far, far away. And what I'm talking about here is actually pollution. Pollution from the US, pollution from Europe, pollution from Asia can also travel all the way to the Arctic. And this is actually one of the things that Hearts in the Ice are studying. This is also one of the things I will be studying next year with my teammates of Climate Sentinels. But the Arctic receives a lot of the good things, but also of all the bad things that are coming from industrialized countries. So yeah, we need to be better on this, and we need to reduce this pollution as quickly as possible.
You know, I've never heard a question quite like the one you guys pose, and it's so interesting because it ties into both pollution and the impact it has, but also oxygenation and good things. So it's not like the trees in Toronto are producing the oxygen that's in Toronto, and that the trees where you guys are in Virginia are producing the oxygen there. It's a global interconnected system, and this speaks to all the work that that Heidi, Hilde, and Sunniva are doing. And so I love that we got a chance to highlight that. So great question, guys.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, so one thing I promised that we do, and we've got some great live questions today, some great ones from YouTube as well. So what can our families at home do? If you're a student, if you're a family at home right now and you want to contribute to making sure that the polar bear survives, that the Arctic regions last, what can we do?
Well, you know, well, we have lots of things we can share. There is no one size fits all for dealing with climate change. We all live in different places, as evidenced by this call. We all have, you know, different ways of engaging with our natural world and different ways we use things. But I like the don't waste that you shared earlier, Jesse. I mean, that's thumbs up for that. One thing I'd like to share that I would love people to do is stay curious. You know, I am not 20 years old anymore, just a little bit older than that. Wink. But in the last 10 months, Hilde and I have been students. In as much as we have taught people about our experience and how we've been living and what we've been observing and what we've been collecting and why, we have learned so much from the scientists like Heidi about what in the world we're collecting and why we're doing it and why it matters. So I would like to just put it back out there to say to all of you on the call, regardless of your age, to stay curious about what's happening out there and understand from start to finish how you get your food, where the water comes from, you know, if there's a fire burning somewhere, how did it start? And, you know, if you have insects or you're around some really interesting clouds or some aurora, if it's dark, become a citizen scientist. Researchers need your help. All of us are citizens and all of us can help scientists. So I would just put a big plug out there to stay passionately curious about our gift of this lifetime in our natural world.
Yeah, so engage and look up citizen science projects. It's hundreds of them, and I'm sure you will find something that you like to do.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. You know, I'm always the bearer of bad news. I'm always talking about the glaciers melting, the polar bears that are not happy about what's happening. But to counteract that, we have to be all about action, and action can be so positive. So indeed, stay curious, look at all these citizen science projects, and I'm sure we'll find a way to all work together.
What a beautiful series of messages, ladies, and a fantastic place to end our broadcast today. Again, Climate Sentinels, Hearts in the Ice, both websites are in the YouTube chat bar. Check them out, learn more, get excited. With Citizen Science Projects, we're actually launching this September, this is our own plug, Backyard Bio. So we're encouraging students and groups all around the world to get out in their backyards, local parks, share pictures of the wildlife near them. And we want to get a global data set for that, highlight all the amazing wildlife around the world, and get kids inspiring one another to get out and observe wildlife. So just something you guys can check out come September. We're going to be launching that. But in general, ladies, this has been such an incredible tour of the Arctic regions. I'm inspired. I know all our families are. More questions than you can shake a stick at. And I just want to say a huge thank you to you both. And demute the microphones of Fabrice, Courtney, Laura's group. So if you guys want to join me in saying a huge thank you to our speakers who are here today, you should all now be demuted. And come on in and yeah, there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, very much.
It was very interesting.
Awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Heidi, Sunniva, Hilde, thank you so much. Enjoy your coffee, and we look very forward to having you back soon for even more broadcasts. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you guys very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. See you all
Bye,
soon.
Courtney.